What's up, guys? Welcome to the Simply Soccer podcast. This is the second one we are doing since we have returned. It's great to do them again. I honestly didn't know there was that much interest in them until like a bunch of you, more than a bunch, a lot of you kind of kept asking randomly, bring the podcast back. So that's what we're going to be doing. So here's how it's going to work so you understand how this is all going to happen. So podcasts are going to be on Sunday, but usually they will be in addition to a video. So they're not going to replace anything. They're not going to take a video away because we already have live streams that technically have taken the place of a normal video on Fridays or most Fridays. What we're doing instead is we're going to have the Sunday podcasts released at around 12 p.m. EST, so that's Eastern Standard Time, so you can calculate that for whatever time zone you're in, and then we will have the normal video at 5. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen today. Today, it might just be the podcast. We might have a video later at 5 p.m. today, but I have to go to the field to get a bunch more footage for later videos that I have coming up. Some that I'm very excited about, but Sunday's the day I go out and get a lot of the footage that I get. So I may not have a video out today, just this podcast. So let's do it. Simply Soccer podcast time. I was amazing how many views and the reception we got for the first one. So thank you guys so much. I love these podcasts because it allows me to dive deeper into topics not only I'm interested in and help me, but I'm sure, you can get some benefit out of it as well. And just remember these topics, I'm no expert in these things. I'm just kind of, letting you know my thoughts on certain things, kind of directing you towards certain references or resources that can also help you. Like today, for example, I'm going to be quoting a lot of things from the book called The One Thing. If you've been following me on Snapchat, that's the book I've been quoting a lot or been sending you guys pictures of a lot is The One Thing. And I'm going to be quoting a lot from this book. I will put a link in the description if you want to check out this book. It's really good. I'm about halfway through it, or a little more than halfway now. And I'm definitely going to reread this book many, many times. I think it's one of those books that just can be life-altering if you apply the advice over a long period of time. Now, and speaking of life-altering, let's go over the topic for today, which is discipline. So I remember someone asking me in the comments, why not do a podcast on discipline? So that's what we're going to be covering. We're going to go over what is discipline. So let's define it. Let's get that out of the way so you understand exactly what it is. We're going to talk about selected discipline, which I think is something that is glossed over or not mentioned a lot of times when people talk about discipline or is implied. But I want to make sure you know what that is. We're going to talk about habits, willpower, what matters. And if we get to it, we'll discuss very briefly the Pareto principle, because that can tie into this a little bit as well. So let's get right into it. What is discipline? So the best definition I've ever heard for what discipline is simply this. Self-discipline, by the way. I'm not talking about like you discipline your kids. I'm talking about your own discipline, your own ability to discipline yourself. So self-discipline. And the best definition I've ever heard is self-discipline is the ability to be able to do what you know you need to do whether you feel like it or not. So essentially, being able to do those things if you're feeling up for it, if you're feeling energized, or if you're feeling tired and you don't want to do them. So, for example, going to the gym, even on those days where you're not really feeling it. Someone who is practicing self-discipline or has developed good self-discipline is able to do it because they have good self-discipline, while the person who doesn't have that discipline will most likely skip that day, which then will, obviously, it's like a downward spiral from there unless you bounce back immediately, because I'm sure many of you know or have experienced when you're trying to develop a habit or discipline yourself to develop a habit, you've noticed that if you've missed a day or two, that you will spiral. If you don't catch yourself, you will just fall right back down to the beginning where you started. I know this happens for a lot of people when they work out. It happened to me, especially when I was younger, when I was working out. I had a lot of trouble maintaining discipline and consistency, and so I didn't see many results. So we're going to talk about that. So that's what discipline is. But we're going to talk about a few different ideas. And what we're going to talk about mainly is selected discipline. And this is something that I've been experimenting with a lot recently because I've noticed, and The One Thing confirms this, the book I'm going to be quoting a lot right now. I've noticed that one of the reasons I fail to discipline myself in certain areas is because I try and bite off I try and bite off more than I can chew. Meaning I'm trying to develop so many things, simultaneously that I end up developing nothing. It's like that really famous quote by like Confucius or something. I don't know exactly who it is. It's an old saying, and it's the man who chases two rabbits ends up catching neither. And what it's saying is, because you're spreading your focus thin, you're trying to catch two things at once. You're focusing on two things instead of, focusing solely on that single thing you want to achieve. Because of that, you end up catching neither. Meaning, if you try and split your attention too much and develop too many different habits and disciplines, you're going to end up developing none. Right? You need your focus, and we'll talk about this because willpower comes into play. You have to determine what matters more than other things, and we will talk about this in this podcast because this all ties together. But what I want you to start experimenting with is selected discipline. So let me actually bring up what selected discipline is, so we're not fumbling around in the dark here. So first and foremost is you don't really need any more discipline than you already have. You already have the ability to direct and manage your discipline. You just need to start doing it a little bit better. And according to the one thing, they say, it usually goes like this. We know something needs to be done, but isn't currently getting done, right? And so what we'll say to ourselves is, well, the reason is I just need more discipline. And it's too vague, right? It's too general. But what we actually need is a habit. Right? We need a habit of doing something, and we need the discipline in order to build the habit, because we get into this kind of romantic idea of being this super disciplined person who's disciplined from the moment he wakes up to the moment he goes to sleep, or she. The problem with that is it's damn near impossible to be disciplined 24/7. What you do instead is you create habits, and by having the habits, it becomes easier. You don't have to think about it all the time, because imagine trying to think about discipline 24/7 or for every waking hour. You wouldn't be able to do it. You'd go insane. But by developing strategically the right habits, you can appear like someone who's super disciplined while not being really any more disciplined than someone else. You just were smart and disciplined yourself in specific areas long enough to develop the habits. So what you want to do is regularly work at something until it regularly works at you. After enough times of going to the gym, of working out, it eventually becomes a habit, and it becomes a discipline to you, something that you don't need to think about too much. It's something that you do. It's like a part of your identity. It's like when you're brushing your teeth, you don't have to think about brushing your teeth, do you? I hope not. You don't have to think when you wake up that you need to go brush your teeth after you eat breakfast or whenever you do it, or before bed. It's something that you've been doing for so long that it's become a habit. It's effortless, right? It doesn't take much mental energy. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to remember it. You don't have to write down a note reminding yourself, make sure you brush those teeth. That last dentist bill was very expensive. You don't have to do that because it's a habit. So that's essentially what we want to do. And when we see people who look like they're quote unquote disciplined people, what you're really seeing is someone who's trained a handful of habits into their life. So it may make them look like they're disciplined when they're really not. No one really is, disciplined in that way, as in they're disciplined all the time. They've just created a handful of very useful habits. And I'm going to discuss what the one thing goes over on how you should choose your habits. And this is from the one thing as well. So according to one thing, most people reach this conclusion, but seeing no alternative, they'll redouble their efforts at the impossible, right? So, the very thought of having your every behavior molded and maintained by training seems frighteningly impossible. And that's what I'm saying. It seems impossible, but most people think that, and most people realize it's impossible, but they don't think there's an alternative, so they put so much effort into that, right? So then you get frustrated when you're not sticking to things, or you're not have you ever gotten to a situation where you've lost your discipline for a little bit and you've gotten super frustrated at yourself to the point where you just stop doing it completely? That's what this is talking about, right? So success is about doing the right thing, not doing everything right. So it's about picking the right thing. What truly matters? What is that habit you need to develop to become a better footballer? Or even in a broader sense, in the grand scheme of things, what will move you forward in your life? These podcasts don't just have to be about football, right? This can just be about general self-improvement. So what is that selected discipline you need in your life, right? You need to ask yourself what matters, and you need to prioritize things, because not everything is created equal when it comes to your habits, when it comes to your behaviors or potential things that you can do. I'm not talking about human equality here. I'm talking about actions are usually not going to produce equal results. Certain actions, certain disciplines, certain habits will give you more, will move you further ahead than other ones. And that's why you need to prioritize what habits you're creating. Okay? So, you want to be a person who builds selected discipline in order to build a very, very, very powerful habit. And the payoff of developing the right habit is pretty obvious. It's extraordinary results. So for football, for example, if you want to develop a certain practicing habit, if you develop it, that's going to provide you with incredible results, isn't it? Because you'll be doing it all the time. You'll be sticking with it. You'll be getting better and better, whatever that habit is you've created, right? It also simplifies things a little bit, because one thing I've struggled with when I'm trying to develop habits, and I've tried to develop 8 at the same time, which is damn near impossible, and I can tell you that right now, is that it overcomplicates things. There's so much to remember. You get so down on yourself if you miss one. Like, I could complete 7 of the habits during the day, but have missed that 8th and get down on myself, and it starts making me frustrated, and to the point where I want to quit, right? So it's not about having 8 disciplines you're developing at once. It's about picking those ones that are really going to impact your life in a powerful way, in the most powerful way. And it goes a long way. Habits are really just hard in the beginning. That's where the discipline comes in, right? But over time, it gets easier and easier and easier. You pick up momentum. It's like when you go in the gym the first few times, you are so sore afterwards. You don't want to do it. It's hard. But after a few months, it's a lot easier, isn't it? For those of you who work out consistently, you know this, right? The first month of working out, the first couple weeks, sometimes you can get a lot of motivation. You're so excited about what you're going to become when you start working out consistently, and that can usually pull you through a week or two. But after the 3rd or 4th week, you start feeling it a little bit. You're starting to get sore. It's hard to get out of bed in the morning. You have to stick to an eating schedule as well. I mean, oh my God, right? It gets tougher, because it hasn't become a habit yet, right? So it's tough. You have to then, at that point, be using your discipline to develop a habit. Now, the reason it's impossible to stay disciplined all the time is a matter of willpower, and we'll cover that in a second as well. But just remember that you want the right discipline. You don't want all the disciplines, because not everything is equal, and things are going to be more valuable to certain people than others. Not everything is equal. Just remember that. Again, I'm not talking about human rights or anything here. I'm just talking about potential habits you could create. Certain habits are going to be much more powerful in your life than other habits, right? So you need to identify, what habit can you create? What is the one thing, speaking of the book, what is the one thing, the one habit you could create that would make an incredible impact in your life or your game or you as a football player? What would that one habit be? Identify it and then put your energy into that one habit. Create that habit. And you can always move on to a new habit after you've created that habit and it's become more subconscious and it's moving along smoothly. I mean, you want to focus your attention on it still a little bit so you don't fall out of it. But what is that habit? Do you need a morning routine, for example? Would getting up at a certain time and having a very solid routine that includes some soccer practice, some other stuff you want, would that be the most powerful habit you could create to change your life? Would it? I don't know. I can't answer it for you. I know for me, having a morning routine is incredible. Especially, sometimes I fall out of it, but when I stick with it for a consistent amount of time, it is incredibly powerful. But it could be something else for you. It could be certain practices. It could be going to the gym consistently. It could be developing a workout schedule and sticking with it. So what is that powerful discipline? What is that powerful habit that would impact your life in a huge way? Because not all habits, not all disciplines are the same in the way they're going to impact you. Some will be more impactful. Some will stand out more. Some will help you more. So just remember that, okay? So that's selected discipline. You need to select the right discipline to build a habit, or to build the very powerful habit that's going to change your life, okay? Change your game. So if we relate this to football again, what is the habit you could develop that would ultimately change your game for the better? Is it simply having a daily ritual where you practice for an hour? I mean, that would be incredibly powerful when you have a set of drills and you alternate them day by day. That would be incredibly powerful, right? So you have to identify what would that be. So let's now talk about willpower, because this is going to come into play with your discipline. So here's the problem with willpower, and the one thing addresses this, is a lot of us will tie our success or, our achievements or what we want to achieve, our goals, to willpower. We think that when times get tough, we'll just will our way through it. But the problem is our willpower is not always there. There actually is a limit to how much willpower you can use. Your willpower depletes as the day goes along. As you expend energy, as you expend mental energy as well, mental and physical energy, the more tired you are, the less willpower you have. And think of your, and actually the one thing puts this in a great analogy, is just think of your willpower like your iPhone or whatever phone or something you have that charges, right? Think of it like that green bar that's depleting the more you use it. And the harder, and put it this way, the things that require more willpower deplete that power even faster. So if you think on your phone, if you like play videos on your phone or you play a game that takes up a lot of space, it depletes faster, right? So think of things that go against your, or take more willpower for you, depletes your willpower even faster. It might be necessary that you do those things, but just understand that's what's happening. So this is why we need to prioritize, and we really need to have selected discipline, because our willpower is limited. So if you're wasting your willpower on things that ultimately don't matter, or on things that are lower priority than your main priority, then you're not going to have any left for that priority. And you might still make it through. You might still get to that workout. You might still get up in the morning, but it's going to be a lot harder. And there might be that one day you miss it, which ruins the whole chain of events. It ruins your whole consistency. So know when you have willpower. Most people have willpower when they wake up. Like in the first few hours of the day, in the morning, people usually have the most willpower. Now, this is not like everyone. Everyone's different. You need to figure out when you have the most energy, when you have the most willpower. And that's when you need to be doing your main discipline. So if it's the morning, that's when it's got to be. When is the time you have the most willpower? The selected discipline you're trying to form, figure out when you have the most willpower and do it in that moment, right? There are going to be days you're going to have to slug through. I mean, sometimes where the schedules don't line up. And again, your discipline's going to come in, your self-discipline's going to come in here. But you want to, like, there seems to be this idea that it has to be hard, right? That achieving your goals, you got to make it as hard as possible, the grind, the hustle. And yes, you need those things, but why would you not want to set yourself up in a way where it's easier, right? Where you're not giving yourself unnecessary challenges. There will be enough challenges anyway. Like there will be challenges and tribulations and hardships that you are coming either way. Like they're going to happen. Don't be someone who, puts the wall in front of you. Don't be this person who then constructs the walls. Right? Don't put walls in front of you for the sake of putting walls there, right? So don't, if you know, for example, that the best time to try and habitualize your selected discipline is when you have the most willpower, do it. Don't be like, you know what? I'll be fine. I'll do it later at night when I know I don't have willpower. You know why? Because I'm better than everyone and I can do it. I have the discipline to do it, because if you fall into that trap, it's going to take you longer, or you're just not going to accomplish it at all. Okay, so, I mean, I'm sure you've had the feeling of having willpower one moment and then not having it, right? As powerful as you are, like, we've all had those moments where we're motivated, and a lot of players actually ask me this, how do I stay motivated? Because sometimes I'm so motivated, and other times I'm not, right? And it probably has to do with your energy and willpower in that moment. When your willpower is high, when you have a lot of energy, you're more motivated and you're like, yeah, I'm going to conquer the world. You're envisioning all these things you're going to do. And then you try and go to practice like when you don't have energy and you're wondering where all that motivation went, where all that willpower went. It depleted because you did other things in its place of your main priority. So one of the things, the one thing goes over is that most people assume willpower matters, but many do not fully appreciate how critical it is to our success. It's huge, It's absolutely huge. It's more important than people realize, because willpower is like one of those things that you see on like motivational posters. It's one of those things you hear a lot of people like, if there's a will, there's a way, but it's not necessarily true, Willpower is so important that using it effectively should be a high priority. That's from the one thing as well. So be very strategic about when you use your willpower, because if you're not using it on the selected discipline you've chosen, which is your morning routine, which is, whatever habit you're trying to create, if you're not using it for that, you're going to really struggle to create that habit. And one powerful habit can change your life. I'm telling you, many successful people back this up. And, many books go over this idea. You look up some of the most famous athletes or entrepreneurs or businessmen or whatever, anybody, you can usually find a similar path they had selected discipline. A lot of them. So willpower has a limited battery life, but can be recharged with some downtime. So you can recharge your willpower. What I usually have heard when I've read books or listened to people talk about this is they say, the next day, when you wake up the next day, you charge your willpower overnight and you then wake up the next day with a full tank of willpower and all that. And there are other things you could probably do, like meditation probably helps. Taking naps would obviously help because that would be sleeping. All this other stuff helps, but just be smart about it. Don't leave these things up to chance. When you have the most willpower, go after your selected discipline, okay? All right, so let's see where we're at. So let's recap real quick, and I will talk about a few other things before we end. So we went over what discipline is. It's your ability to do what it is you need to do, whether you feel like it or not. We talked about you need to select a discipline, and you need to determine which discipline can I select, what habit can I create that will powerfully impact my life in the best possible way. So if we're relating this to football, so pick that habit within football, under the umbrella of football, that would impact your game and your life in the most impactful way. And, don't take this lightly. Don't be commenting saying, whoa, what is it, Dave? Which one? Because it's going to be different for every single person. Really think about this. Take as long as you need to think about what this main discipline is, because for the next few months, you're going to be working on developing this if you're staying with this, right? So we went over that. We went over habits. We went over how discipline isn't necessarily what you're after. You need to discipline yourself long enough to build the habit. That's kind of the byproduct of being disciplined long enough. You create the habit, which makes things a lot easier. And that's what you want. Again, don't make things more hard on you than it needs to be. Disciplining yourself long enough to get to a habit's hard enough. Don't make it any more difficult than it needs to be, right? We talked about willpower, which is incredibly important and should be a priority. Prioritize your most important tasks when you have the most energy, when you have the most willpower. So that includes your selected discipline, right? So whatever your selected discipline is, schedule it. Do it when you have the most willpower, when you have the energy. So if you're sitting there and you have a lot of energy and you're like, oh, what should I do? What should I go do? I could do this, this, and this. And you're like, you know what? I'll play video games right now instead of going out and practicing or doing whatever it is you need to do or work out. That's bad discipline. That itself, discipline yourself to use your willpower at the correct moments. That's a good way of putting it. Discipline yourself to use your willpower when you need to use it the most, because it's in limited supply. It's not, when you're at night and you're like, if you're like me, you're cursing yourself because you didn't do the things you should have done. Just give yourself that advantage. Give yourself that boost. Use it, do it when you have the most willpower. We also went over what matters. So you have to decide what matters the most for you in your game. What do you need to improve the most? What will impact your life the most? Things are not created equal in this way. Again, I differentiated between equality in like a human rights way and what I'm talking about here, which is not all habits are created the same or equal the same or as impactful as each other, right? And for each person, it might be different. So you need to figure out what habit would have the most impact, what matters, because not everything is created equal when it comes to habits, okay? So that's what we've covered so far. So I want to cover the Pareto principle real quick. Let's see how much time we have. We can get it in. The Pareto principle. So what the Pareto principle is, basically is saying that it's the 80-20 rule as well, as it's commonly known, meaning it's saying that like 20% of your work endeavors, 20% of what you do leads to 80% of your results. And the reason this is significant is because if you can hone in on what is that 20% that I'm doing that's bringing about 80% of my results, you can focus more on that 20% and then, do it more than 20% of the time. It allows you to focus and hone in on the things that actually give you results. And the reason I want to bring this up is because this helps with you choosing your selected discipline. So what is it you're doing in your life right now that is bringing about the most results? What practices are you doing to improve your game that's bringing you the most results? Because if 20% of your practice, and again, this doesn't have to be just 80-20. This could be, any ratio. It could be 65-5, like 5% of your actions are leading to 65% of your results. It could absolutely be that. It's just a general way of putting it, 80-20, right? To easily understand it. But you need to figure out what is that small percentage of something you're doing, or small percentage of action you're taking that's leading to the majority of your results, to the majority of the good things that are happening to your game, right? Is it a certain drill? Is it certain practices? Are you eating it? What is it? Identify what it is and do more of that. Create a selected discipline doing that, right? You'll be surprised how powerful, and this is something I'm still learning. I'm still working on creating certain habits and certain disciplines, but I've seen the effect of consistently doing something, a powerful habit for a while. And it really, really is amazing the results you can get if you can create a powerful habit, right? You look at people who have created the habit of working out, for example, and they're doing it in the right way, like they're eating right, they're progressively working out, like that, and they're hitting their goals. You've seen the results. They're healthier, they look better, they're stronger, probably more confident. Just from developing that one habit, it changes their life in a significant way, right? They discipline themselves to go to the gym, to do the research on what they need to be working at when they're at the gym, eating the certain things. They develop that discipline all around that one area, and it changed their life significantly. I guarantee it. I knew a guy actually who he was really skinny. When I met him, he was like huge. He was buff. He was like a big guy. I used to work with him. But he told me that before I came there to work, he was a really skinny guy, like only months before, like half a year before. And he said, he got tired of it and said, what, I'm going to discipline myself. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to eat right. I'm going to eat a lot. I'm going to do what I need to do. And he became this cut, really big, strong guy. And he said, dude, it changed my life. He told me that, and he said, it changed my life. I became more confident. People respected me more. He did better with the ladies, he said. A lot of things happened. It changed his life. And so he developed this is just from one powerful habit. There are other habits that probably go under the umbrella of that habit, but his main habit was, to get bigger, to get stronger. And through doing that one thing and focusing solely on that one habit for however long he did it, like 6 months to 8 months or so, he changed his life. So based on that, it definitely is worth it. Based on what the one thing is telling us, it's definitely worth it. Okay. So those are the things for today, guys. I hope this has given you a good idea. Like the main takeaway I want you to take away from this is to develop selected discipline. You know what discipline is? I'm sure you've tried discipline in the way that I've tried discipline. You understand that you can't be disciplined all the time, but you do understand now that you can create powerful habits, right? That make it seem like you're incredibly disciplined. But what really happened is you disciplined yourself to the point where you created the habit. So what I want you to do is, if this is something that's very important to you, is after you're done listening to this podcast, select the discipline you want to work at and create a powerful habit on. Take your time with this. So what is your selected discipline? In fact, tell me in the comments, #selected discipline. Okay, that will be our hashtag, selected discipline. And tell me, if you can always change it, but tell me what you think yours is going to be. So if it's going to be like working out, if it's going to be waking up early and having a very solid morning routine you follow. I don't know what it's going to be for you. It's going to be different for everyone. But select it. And you know what? Select one that you think you're going to go for, but you can change it later. Like if you tell me one and then because it's quickly and you think about it a little more and then you change it, absolutely fine. But let me know what you think it's going to be and put #selected discipline. All right, guys. So thank you so much for listening. I hope all of that makes sense. I'm trying to explain it in a way that makes sense. But I think this is a very powerful idea. I think discipline in general is a powerful idea. And I think with ideas like this, it's important we get it right. And it's important we really do our research and then really take action with these kind of topics. And I love the idea of selective discipline. You know, I've seen it work in my life without me even knowing. I've noticed that when I've tried to take on fewer habits and really focused on only a few areas, a couple areas, or even one area, that I've gotten the most results. And it's kind of filtered into other parts of my life as well. So I hope this has been, good for you. Again, put that hashtag selective discipline and let me know what yours is going to be. Remember, if you leave a hashtag, it lets me know that you've listened all the way through. And I love to know which people are listening all the way through, because it shows me, or really tells me, who's really serious about this kind of thing, who's really serious about these topics, these self-improvement, self-development topics, and who really is trying to become better. So let me know. And of course, if you do a hashtag, our hashtag, it's much more likely that I will answer your topic. In fact, today's topic on discipline is because someone put it in the comments in the last podcast with the hashtag, which I think was, what was the hashtag? Progress or something, for the last one. So yeah, I'm much more likely to answer your question or what you want covered if you list, because I want to be covering the topics for the people who actually listen all the way through. All right, guys, thank you so much. Remember to leave your comments down there with your suggestions for future podcasts. We might have a video later today at 5 p.m. If I'm able to get it out. If not, I will see you in the video on Monday, but definitely check back at 5 just briefly to see if I have it. Maybe it'll be a little later, but if it's not out by like 7, you can assume that it's going to come out Monday instead. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you learned something from this. Please leave the hashtag down there. It's been a pleasure talking with you, even if it's only been a one-sided conversation. But thank you anyway, and I will speak to you or see you in the next video.